Illinois Stories is brought to you by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, Illinois Arts Council Agency, and by the support of viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, welcome to Illinois Stories. I'm Mark McDonald near Loami at the Nipper Wildlife Sanctuary. 120 acres of heaven if you enjoy hiking through wetlands and native prairie. Vern LaJess, Friends of Sangamon Valley, and the Nipper Wildlife Sanctuary, they sort of flow right together, don't they?
Well, I'm one person, and so both projects have me.
Yeah, have you, for better or worse, right? This is a remarkable place. People that may have heard of Nipper but have never been out here, it is really a find. It's a real gem. It's a beautiful place.
We call it the best kept secret in Sangamon County. And once people come here, they know they've missed something before, because that's all they talk about once they get here.
And you welcome people to come out here and walk the grounds, even if they have a dog, right?
Exactly. Open every day from sunrise to sunset. And if you got a dog, as long as they can control the dog, we welcome them to come out here and bring them. There's just not many places to bring a dog.
Not every conservation area allows dogs, so that's really a good thing to know. But for people who aren't familiar with this, the Nipper Wildlife Sanctuary is 120 acres, but then you also have several hundred other acres that you're working with the neighbors on joining it all up.
About the past 7 or 8 years, we started working with our neighbors, helping them burn their prairies, enhance their prairies, take care of the exotic species. And on some of them, we're actually leasing their prairie ground from them. But we've got a network of 5 neighbors joining us, which has got us working on over 400 acres of conservation out here now. And it's that size that really matters on these projects.
This used to be all farm country.
15 to 20 years ago, this was all beans and corn.
Soy, sure. Yeah. Now, when you look out here and you see the green area, that's all prairie now. That used to be all corn and beans, but it's all prairie now.
As far as you can see, and what I love is in the prairie state is we have a vista of prairie. And for central Illinois, this is one of the largest prairies around, or restorations around. And the endangered species are finding it. Build it and they will come is definitely a true line for us here. We had Henslow sparrows, endangered grassland bird. We've had several of the rarer grassland birds here from bobolinks. And with our wetlands going here, we get lots of waterfowl, shorebirds. Last year, our neighbors had whooping cranes here for 9 days.
Wow.
And for me, when I have the only central Illinois occurrences of these species, for many of them, it's a real feather in my cap.
Wow, I'll bet. Now, okay, we're talking about the prairie here, but you also have recreated some of the wetlands out here, and you've got 5 wetlands that you have built.
On the site, on the 120 acres, we have 15 wetlands altogether that we've built, and then we've started working with our neighbors to help build wetlands on their property. 85% of all wetlands in Illinois have been destroyed. And so it's where we have these, we can actually bring people to show them how they function, the unique plants that are here, because most of the wetlands that are here just don't have the native plants. They've been overrun with exotic species. And so this is one of the few places I can actually bring someone and show them true wetland plants.
Now, okay, we're sort of right in the middle of the visitor area. Describe to us what we're looking at here.
Well, we own from the far side of Lick Creek, which would be the far tree line, and over there was forest. We've taken out all the exotic thorny trees, and we have been in the process of over 10 years. We have planted over 1,500 trees, and we've got a volunteer down there today who just put in 200 more trees this spring. And it's kind of his little project is working on these tree plantings. But he's here 500-600 hours a year volunteering with us.
This is really, I'm sure to take care of this property, you need a shed this size, but this is a huge help right here. Was this always here?
This was always here. It was an open den shed that we just put a door on and revamped it. And for the friends, we've got lots of equipment. We work in 9 counties. This is our flagship. It's the only place we have to store our equipment. The Nipper has a lot of their own equipment, and between the two, it's quite a synergistic experience for both of us.
This building behind us, this looks rather new, and it looks really functional.
This is the Nipper Nature Center that came up. We finished it about 5 years ago. I can put 38 people at a seated table where we do lectures. It's for use for educational groups and conservation groups only, specified in the will by Mr. and Mrs. Nipper. And so it's quite a building for us to be able to utilize for workshops and other events we do. June 8th, we have a Prairie Day event here where we'll have 100 people out here looking at the prairie and the wetlands.
Terrific. Okay, and you mentioned the Nippers. They were the longtime owners of this property, and they were the ones that really wanted to see it conserved and back in its natural state. That's how your group came by this property.
In a long way around, that's how we ended up. They liked wildlife more than people.
Okay,
and
I know a lot of people like that.
And so we kind of fit right in. I wish I would have known the Nippers, but they passed before I got involved out here. But of all the projects I've ever been involved with, this is the only one that left land to be restored and left a funding mechanism, where they also left 200 flat black tillable acres. 4 years ago, the bank decided to sell it. 15-minute auction. We've got a $3.5 million endowment now just for this project.
Okay, so when you need something like the education building or the bridges built for the hiking trails, you've got the facility, the money to do it.
Since it's an estate, we're forced by the Attorney General to spend 5% of our gross, so we're trying to spend between $100,000 and $150,000 a year, which projects like the building come in handy in between things. When we first started, we just had the prairie, and so we went with 150 species minimum for our mixes. The prairie seed alone would cost us $3,000 an acre because we could. Most places are lucky to get $300 an acre of seed, which gives us plants that we're just not going to see anywhere else around. For the Friends of the Sangamon Valley, we're collecting seeds on work days here and moving that stuff to the 3,000 acres that we manage elsewhere. And so this is a great project for us. Before
we take a look at the map of this place, I want to look at this flower over here. You told me this was some kind of rocket, right?
Yellow rocket. It's, a native mustard. It comes up in disturbance areas. So from where we spray around this curb, we get an edge of this, and pennycrest is another of the mustards that find their way into these disturbed areas.
You planted all this in Prairie, and that's not easy to do because you have to take out all the old drainage tiles that were in there for the farms.
We were able to do that. And for these wetland prairie interfaces, restoring the hydrology, the way the water moves through the ground, is so important. On the higher areas out here are the surcharge areas where the rainwater goes in and then it works its way through the ground and comes out at the wetlands. So it's being filtered through the ground. It's coming out when it does surface at a colder temperature for the aquatic organisms that are in the wetlands really like that cold, fresh water. We're finding some of the cleanest water coming out here, where most of the groundwater in our budget, there's about 20% from the surface, about 80% coming out of groundwater.
And you have a way to test that water too, and you have a little lab here on site, and we're going to see that later in the program. For right now, though, I want to take a look at that map, and then I want you to take us to one of these wetlands that you developed here.
Okay.
Let's go. Vern, when you pull in here off Withers Road, there's a parking area, and then you and I are standing right in this area here, but for the audience that doesn't know the configuration here, this is the 120 acres, and it's in a band, and then it goes all the way across Withers Road and then down to the creek, which is what you were talking about here, right? So that's the shape of the 120 acres, and then you've got the surrounding acreage from the neighboring farmers.
Yeah, it'd be all going that way.
Okay, this way. And then this is, say, there's the education center and the shed and everything is right up here. Okay, and there's an information kiosk, and then across the road, these are where you've got some of the wetlands, and we can see that bigger over here because that's a blow up, and these are across Withers Road, and then these are some of the wetlands you've created. And this is really nice because this shows you where you are in relation to the kiosk and the visitor center, the education center that we saw earlier. And you've done a lot of work out here, and it shows. I mean, it's not just, I thought it was just a place, a wild place, but it's really a very welcoming place too.
We really enjoy coming out here. The only person that likes coming here more than me is my dog.
Maybe we'll meet him too. Okay, you talked about wetlands and why they're so important and why they're indicative of the health of a piece of property. And you have created those here. And what I'd like to do next is go across the road to the wetlands, and you can show us how you built them and how you keep the levels where they should be. Okay. Vern, I can hear the water traveling under our feet here. And this is one of the, what do you call this, a stop?
This is a water control structure or a stop log structure.
Okay, now it's obviously flowing downhill, but what are you controlling? How are you controlling it?
I have a series of these plastic logs, and they come in different widths. And so by shifting the different sizes, I can make 2-inch increments and control the water that's in the pool above us.
Okay, so it's letting it out really fast right now. I mean, it's going to go, okay, I see. Okay, you just raised the level of it so there's not as much of it coming out.
And so it comes up in half of this little square into the elevation, then it falls back down and then goes out on the rest of the pipe that goes through the berm.
And then you've got these situated around it at each one of the wetlands that you developed?
On the first 4. I don't have one on the final one that falls out to Lick Creek.
It's running down here, and then it goes under the road?
Yes, there's a culvert. You can see it going through the culvert, and then it comes into the second wetland.
There's a series of them there, and they're sort of like a pond and a
Well, and as a water polishing or water treatment, they get more phosphates, nitrates removed every cell. And so phosphates, nitrates off the charts in the first one, hard to detect in the 5th one.
No kidding.
And that's what the Soil and Water had found in their earlier findings.
And it's not just a matter of diluting it. In fact, it gets filtered through the soil. Is that
through the plants?
Through the
plants are the ones taking up those things and then storing it in their blades or their roots. Well, and when we get to the other one, I'll tell you about Sweet Flag, which is doing most of that work.
Good. Let's go see it. Okay, Vern, we're downstream now, and this is a larger body of water than what we saw before. Did you have to dig this out with a backhoe?
We came in with scrapers and bulldozers and backhoes, and so before I was in conservation, I was in construction, and so I'm one of the few biologists that actually knows how to run a dozer and scraper.
Comes in handy, doesn't it? At least it did for this
comes in
project.
handy when contractors try to give you the long run.
That's right. That's right. You know what? Now, okay, this is some of the grass that you said is really helpful for a wetland. It's native, isn't it?
This is Sweet Flag, and this is the one we dug up that we found here existing along the ditch line. And here's the plant. Here's its flower. So it's a real nondescript flower, but the plant is easily recognized by the midrib, this little ridge in the center of the blade. And when bruised, has a very fruity or smell to it.
Yeah.
Indian warriors would make braids to put in their hair so they smelled good when they'd go courting. The root is quite a natural stimulant, but very bitter. But you can see how it can grow from in the water a couple feet to out of the water a couple feet. And across here we can see that it actually armors that whole edge of the side of the wetlands. So if we go to any farm ponds around, we'll see the wave erosion along the edge where the wind is in waves have eroded that edge out. Here the plant is taking care of all that energy and armoring it in a bio way for us. The plant also serves for vertical structure in the water, where the crawdads, the tadpoles, they need places to hide for all the predators that are after them. If I take my GoPro and go through these plants, there are literally tens of thousands of crawdads in each one of these cells right now, along with 5 species of tadpoles, frogs, 2 species of salamanders.
You were talking about the fact that there are times of the years when birds love this. That's because it's a banquet, isn't it?
Well, for migrating species, they're needing this big protein boost to make it the rest of their flight. The whooping cranes that came to our neighbor's wetland were eating the crawdads out of there before they went back to Baraboo, Wisconsin. But all of the things in wildlife that are connected to these wetlands are here because of water and then food.
Now, this is called sweet flag? Is
Sweet flag.
Okay, this is a native. It's very desirable, and it spreads. Luckily, it doesn't. I mean, you can
Yes.
take this and you can start another bunch of it somewhere else.
When we first started moving this, I've always got extra plants. Lincoln Memorial Garden has sweet flag that came from here. DNR headquarters has got some. When we cleared this wetland out, we used a bobcat, and literally we would have mats 5-6 feet long, 4 feet across. Ken would lift up a whole bucket at a time, put it in a trailer. I'd take the trailer and dump it on the neighbor's wetland. But we've moved this stuff all over the place. But it's a plant I just don't see anywhere else. If we're not moving it there, very seldom is it there all on its own. The one thing, when the ducks come, they will bring me 44 species of wetland plants with seeds stuck on their feathers. Every once in a while, they'll bring me fish. And 3 years ago, I had sunfish in all of the wetlands that the ducks originated in.
Doggone.
The fish eat all my frogs and tadpoles. I got rid of the fish. Now I'm back to my frog ponds.
Yeah. And now this one, and then there's 2 more down.
There are 3 more
16.
before it goes into Lick Creek and then back to Lake Springfield.
And then Lick Creek is clearer and purer because of these wetlands, because these plants absorb the chemicals. And then Lick Creek is cleaner, and Lake Springfield's cleaner as well.
Well, in the soil and water for Sangamon County is wanting to duplicate this with if there are other landowners wanting to participate in such a program. Wetlands seem to have such a bad stigma from what people think they are, and most of the time they've never seen a true functioning balanced wetland. Where here I don't have mosquitoes, I've got dragonflies that are eating all of the mosquitoes. And so as with restoration, it's putting nature back in balance.
Charlene Falco, out here at Nipper, the group has created a number of wetlands. And I guess part of the reason for creating wetlands is to find out, or to secure the fact that these wetlands really can kind of take care of themselves if they're created right. I mean, they sort of, they deal with pollutants and they deal with nature the way it was intended before there were wetlands. A lot of farm was built on wetlands, and the wetlands disappeared, and of course then the runoff doesn't take care of itself the way it used to. So you've recreated wetlands here, and one of the things you do is you take samples of the water to see whether it's taking care of itself.
That's certainly part of it. You know, we want to see what the interaction is between the wetlands and the surrounding environment, and if they're providing any benefit to the larger environment as a whole.
Yeah.
So,
how did you learn this?
I have a degree from Eastern Illinois University in environmental biology, their ecology
okay. Well, that
degree,
comes in handy,
basically.
sure.
Yep. And I do work for the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency. It's not part of this effort here. I'm doing this as a volunteer with the Friends of the Sangamon Valley. And I also have had a little lab experience in the past, so I know a little bit about a lot of topics, so a little bit dangerous at
One
this
of
point.
them's collecting water from this wetland and then finding out, you have a lab on site here.
Yes, we do.
And you can actually get results pretty quickly, can't you?
Yep.
Let's get a sample. Let's take a sample.
Typically what we do is we would take a sample during a routine sampling event from each of the 5 wetlands. This is wetland number 1, and when we take a sample, we also take certain field parameters, okay? Things like temperature, dissolved oxygen, pH, total dissolved solids. And we do that with a field gauge, okay? This doesn't get dissolved oxygen, but it takes pH and temperature and some of the other things.
Okay.
And so, I would ask you to hold my sample bottle. And this is a high-tech piece of sampling equipment called a
Isn't
dipper.
it? A dipper.
And of course, we can't really get in here and So we kind of rinse the dipper a few times. And then grab the sample, pull it up. And what we can do is we can pour it in, and technically you should be wearing gloves yourself.
Okay,
But this is a demonstration sample.
Yes, it is. Okay.
So we pour it very carefully.
I haven't touched any of it.
It won't hurt you if you do, if it does.
Those turtles don't seem to be bothered by it, so I
No,
don't think it's
they're
going to
not.
bother me.
I got to fill the bottle.
Okay.
So let me get another grab. There you go. That's about 500 mils.
Man,
that's
that's
what we
full.
need.
Plumb
Put
full.
the cap on that.
Okay.
And then I go back to the same location where I grabbed the sample, and I take these field measurements. And this is a, it's called a PT tester, which I believe is the brand name, waterproof meter. Just simply turn it on. And this will have gone through a calibration also. It's not working.
It's
right
not
now.
behaving, is it? Probably ran out of batteries.
You know, sometimes, lately, the batteries, I'm gonna have to drop this, I'm afraid.
Well, I'll tell you what. Let's go inside with our sample, and see what we can learn in there. What do you think? You got?
Okay. Sometimes lately these batteries have been coming out a little bit. If I just push them back down, there we go.
Okay.
So you want me to?
Yeah, let's get another
that? All
sample
right.
and
Let's
get a
get
reading
that.
on that.
So take another. All right, and you simply hold. It'll toggle through different measurements, different parameters. For instance, that's total dissolved solids. That's pH. Okay, and you simply hold the meter in the water. There's a couple of measuring probes on the bottom of the meter there. And that top number is your total dissolved solids in part per million. And the bottom number is your temperature in centigrade.
Okay.
And we just wait for those readings to stabilize. And once they stabilize, we record,
Then you record
the data
it, huh? Okay.
on a data sheet or a logbook, whatever we have handy that day. And so this is the station we're at, Wetland 1, the date the sample was taken, the time, the people that were part of the sampling team, and a little bit of information about the sample itself. It was during a routine event in the wetland. Field duplicate and blind duplicate refer to quality control samples we take. And then we record the weather, current weather and weather for the last 24 hours. And then this is where we would record the numbers from the PT tester. You know, we'd take the temperature, total dissolved solids, and the pH. From the other meter, we would take dissolved oxygen about 6 inches below the water surface and about 6 inches from the bottom of the wetland. And we also get some other measurements from the YSI meter, and we can compare them to the PT tester.
And then inside you have a small lab, but you have some very sophisticated equipment in there, which can further give you information about this. How often do you do this? Like at each station? Like
about once a month. We take routine samples, and then we'll take additional samples if there's a stormwater. If there's a rain event that gets runoff here, at a swale, a field tile, a culvert, and then the outflow from the last wetland. And if there's runoff coming from those areas, we take additional samples whenever we can.
And you're working with a consulting company that is actually doing an overview for you as all this testing goes on.
Correct.
They'll actually be able to have some conclusions for you, won't they?
Yeah, we're working with Northwater. They have an office here in Springfield, and they designed the study, helped set us up, helped us purchase the equipment, advised us on the equipment to buy. In fact, the field instruments belong to them. They have their own instruments out here that are doing some monitoring. They're downloading the data from continuous data loggers, and they're there to answer any questions we have about what we're doing and how we're doing it, and make sure we stay on track.
Well, Charlene, thank you very much.
You bet.
Okay, now we're looking at the last 2 wetlands, Vern, that you built here before it dumps into the water, gets filtered again, and dumps into Lick Creek. And there's an individual down there working. What's he doing?
That's Jeff Beckler from North Water Consulting. He's our wetland consultant. He's downloading probes, so we've got probes that tell us how much water's in each wetland every 15 minutes. And he's got a probe, and they're taking a water sample at the outflow. So the water going out after the 5th wetland before it goes back into Lick Creek.
That'll tell them a lot if they take it from below the 1st wetland to below the 5th wetland. They'll learn a lot, won't they?
Well, and if we take it above it, right where it's coming off the field, our neighbor wants to know how much fertilizer he's losing. And then we're able to document what method he's using is best for him versus how much of those things are coming through our system, how much of that we're taking out with our system here.
It's a constant battle with farming as successful as it is in Illinois. And it's successful partly because of fertilizers and other chemicals. So there's this constant washing of those chemicals into the water system.
But with the changing in the Clean Water Act, phosphorus has become a thing that's being regulated now, and farming is the big contributor to that. And so we're trying to see are these natural processes, if we restore more of these wetlands, can we help the water quality in Lake Springfield? And so for me, to be able to think about a natural method as opposed to a chemical method, for me it serves wildlife at the same time. And so those are the things I'm always looking for, is how can wildlife benefit mankind?
Now, as we stand here in mid-May, the prairie hasn't really taken off yet, but when it's not wetland, here it's prairie, and some of the early flowerings are coming on, aren't they?
Well, and we're in a prairie that was burnt in March, and so in 2 months it's green back up. This is wood betony. It has this tubular yellow flower. It's not rare by any means, but I do not find it in many places. It needs a very dry soil for it to grow. And so it's on the driest spot out here at Nipper. And we put seeds for everywhere. The seeds grow where they can grow. And so they just won't grow where it's too wet.
Yeah. You know, I find that remarkable that you were able to get all of this, most of this 120 acres planted in prairie. And now you're to the point where now you collect, it keeps itself seeded. Now you're to the point where you take the seeds and distribute it other places. I just think that's fantastic.
I think that's the part, we're at the mature part of the prairie here now. So we're still dealing with exotic species, and we put most of our time into taking that they don't get a foothold in the prairie here. But our work is expanding.
Well, Vern, thanks for the tour out here. It's just a beautiful place, and wish you the best of luck at keeping the monitoring of this water going. Thank you.
9560 Withers Road. Come visit us.
It is open to the public every day from dusk to dawn, and you can bring your dog out here. And in addition to that, take a look at their website, the Friends of Sangamon Valley, because they will have upcoming tours of Nipper, and you can learn when that'll be, and you can learn more about this beautiful wildlife sanctuary. With another Illinois story, I'm Mark McDonald near Loami. Thanks for watching.
Illinois Stories is brought to you by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, Illinois Arts Council Agency, and by the support of viewers like you. Thank you.